Now, I just wanted to do this video on why you should definitely not have a thick substrate layer at the bottom. Okay, so the first reason, well, there's pretty much two factors. First one is any undisturbed gravel areas or like deep gravel, they form toxic sulfide gases, so hydrogen sulfide gases. So this can leach into the aquarium over time, which is somewhat less toxic. But if you disturb this gravel in any way, say you are moving plants or something like that, then this gas will come up in the form of bubbles. So it can happen even in thin substrate layers like this, except it's rarer because, like, there's not as much areas which are going to be anaerobic. So if I didn't move this for ages, or this log here for like ever, then gases could form underneath this. So it's pretty much areas where it's like undisturbed, and that happens a lot more in the deeper substrate. So if I move that, well, it's been disturbed recently, but let's just say that there's hydrogen sulfide under it because I haven't cleaned there, or if it was deep, if I moved it, then the hydrogen sulfide will come up in bubbles, and that, depending on how much comes out, that can be very toxic for fish. So they get hydrogen sulfide poisoning, and it like burns their gills and such. So Majestic Aquarium's TV talks about hydrogen sulfide quite in detail in their videos, and I'm going to link one in the description. And another resource is Fish Disease and Treatment by Edward J. Noga. So that's a book, and that actually has a section in it about hydrogen sulfide poisoning. So I would strongly suggest against having a deep gravel bed or a deep sand bed, pretty much anything that's deep, because just the risk of that hydrogen sulfide building up, and then at any time when because it's eventually going to get disturbed, right? Whether you're planting plants or whether you need to remove the gravel or something like that, at some point it's going to get disturbed, and that is when you're going to have problems. And later we'll talk about how, I might talk about it now. So you can reduce the toxicity or like remove hydrogen sulfide by basically removing as much water as possible, and also using something called ChemiPure and polyfilter. That will help to remove the toxic hydrogen sulfide, and also adding more surface agitation for oxygen. So that's one big reason. So I used to have more of a deep gravel bed, not in this tank, but in one of the other tanks, and I'm pretty sure it literally killed my old pleco, because it's just so toxic. You know that eggy smell sometimes you get from if you're vacuuming your tank or whatever? That's hydrogen sulfide. So, and it's very toxic. It's actually toxic for humans as well. Obviously not to the degree fish, it's toxic to fish, but in mines that's why they used to send a bird in, because if there's hydrogen sulfide gas, that bird would die, and then the miners would run out. So obviously humans can't breathe it because it's toxic, and it's also it's toxic to fish. So ouch. Don't listen to people when they say, yeah, have a deep substrate bed or deep gravel bed, because they're not going to be paying for your fish when they die, when all your fish die, when somehow the gravel gets disturbed, or when it leaches hydrogen sulfide. They're just going to blame you. They're not going to be paying for the actual results of their poor suggestions and what they recommend, see? Okay, so that's the first factor of why it's just a terrible idea to have a deep gravel bed. The second is because parasites can actually hide in the gravel, in the deep gravel. So if you ever have ick or nastier parasites, they so they have a cyst version which falls down to the bottom of the gravel. So because I'm vacuuming this constantly and it's thin, I can remove it much more easily. But just now imagine if it's thick, what's going to happen? It's just going to go down and it's going to be there and it's going to hide, and you're probably going to just have repeated issues. Especially with stuff which is more nasty than ick, like cryptobia. But obviously that's rarer. So yeah, it's just a terrible idea to have a deep gravel bed. So yeah, I'll link those videos, some of those videos, and I'll write down the book which talks about hydrogen sulfide poisoning. And it says it's more of an issue in marine tanks because they have deeper gravel beds, but you do not want to introduce this to your freshwater tank by deliberately having a deep substrate bed, because it's just, the risk is not worth it.